Hi and welcome back to my channel. This week I've got a little story for you. Yeah, it's about natural dyeing, but it's something that happened to me on my dog walk last week. I'd heard that pomegranate was a great thing to dye with, and I was on my walk with Coco, my little dog, and I found one by pure miracle just on the ground, and I noticed that lots of them had been squished. In fact, one was squished right in front of me by this rubbish truck, and I was quite devastated that it was destroyed. And then I found more in the tree above me, so I picked up the pomegranates that I could find, and they were all damaged, which was okay because I didn't want to eat the fruit. I just wanted to use the skins. It was then that the owner, an elderly gentleman, came out, and I told him what my plans were and that I was going to make some dye with these pomegranates, and I hope it's okay that I've been picking them up off the floor. He said, "I've got loads more you can have," and his wife wrapped them all up, and I was able to bring them back to the studio. I decided that they were quite damaged, so that I probably wouldn't eat them. The man had already told me that they probably weren't ripe enough to eat yet, and that October or November is the best time for his tree. So I just decided that I was going to harvest the skin from the pomegranate and use it in my dyes. I started off by washing the pomegranate fruit itself, and then I scored the skin and then pulled out all the fruit. I don't want to have any rotten fruit in my dye because it would go moldy, so I just wanted the pure skin. Once I'd got all the fruit out of the pomegranate, I did have a little taste of the decent ones, and they were not delicious at all. They were absolutely inedible. So unfortunately I had to let them go, but I did get lots and lots of skins for dyeing projects. Once I'd sorted out just the skins, I gave them another little wash. I put them in a tray outside the studio in the sunshine and let them dry. Unfortunately, some of them did get a little bit of mold on, and I had to throw those away because they were unsafe. For the next part of the process, I got some soy milk and some paintbrushes and a little pot, and I made sure that I covered my table with a plastic sheet. For this project I used one of my kids' old bed sheets. It had just been cleaned really well and was so soft. The unusual thing about this process is that you don't mordant your fabrics beforehand. So this was a very unusual technique for me. What I was going to do was paint with soy milk, and soy milk behaves as a mordant. You can actually use it all over your fabric as a mordant. But in this case, what I was going to do, I was going to paint with the mordant, and then where the mordant has been is where the dye will take the most, and where it hasn't been, mostly it will wash away. So I'm laying my fabric out really flat on the table. I did make a small error here. I should have just laid it flat on the table and left it where it was, but we live and learn. I decided to use two different types of paintbrushes, but really you can make marks with anything. You can even print with something. It is limitless what you do here. You just have to be able to make marks on the fabric with the soy milk. I'm all set up, and it's time to get the soy milk onto the fabric. I have no idea what pattern I'm going to do. I'm just going to do it by however I feel. So I put the milk inside a pot or a glass jar and then just start painting your design. Remember that your fabric needs to be unmordanted and completely dry to do this process, or else it just won't work. This is where I made a little bit of an error. I moved the cloth along the table, and I forgot that the soy milk had gone through the fabric and gone onto the table. And as I moved the fabric across, I basically mordanted a big blob of my fabric in the center of it. So my suggestion would be to make a piece of plastic or use a table that is exactly the right length for your fabric, and do not move it. I ended up loving the results anyway, so it didn't really matter, but if you're looking for something more precise in your design, then do not move it. When I got back to the studio the next day, I checked the fabric and it was obviously completely dry by this point, but it was also a little bit yellow in the places that I had painted, so I could actually see the soy milk still. And it felt a little bit thicker in those areas, a bit crispy. So all you have to do next is fold it up and put it away for a few days, a minimum of 5 days, a little bit longer if you can, so that the mordanting process can take effect. I don't usually go into the studio at the weekends, but I thought I'd make an exception today because I wanted to make the dye ahead of time so that it would have overnight to steep. I'm just very conscious of not using too much gas and too much electricity in this dyeing process. I'm trying to be as sustainable as I can. As you can see, the pomegranate skin is very dry now and has changed colour, but you can see a lovely yellow golden colour. That is the bit that changes the water into the dye. It's been very hot and sunny in Japan lately, so it took about 5 to 6 days for those pomegranate skins to dry completely. And then I put them in the jar with a silica gel packet that I got from some biscuits, and it kept them crispy and dry. I've brought my pot to the boil and I'm just going to put a few pieces in there, and you can already see immediately it starts to release that beautiful golden colour. So you don't actually need that many skins for one dye bath. As you can see, I didn't put much in there at all. Within seconds of hitting the hot water, it's changing. So I'm going to let this boil for about 20 minutes and then we'll see what colour we get. It's been 20 minutes, so we're going to see what colour we get in the dye bath. So let's have a look. Be careful you don't burn yourself here, it's going to be really hot. And here we go. This is just 20 minutes. It looks like a golden syrup kind of colour. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's not enough to dye the fabrics the colour that I want them to go. So let's just let it sit overnight and I'll come back Monday morning and do the dye on the soy milk fabric that has been put away. It's about 5 days since I did the soy milk painting on this cotton fabric, and everything is completely dry. Obviously there's no mold or anything like that. I put it away somewhere really dry so nothing happened to it. Now it's time to wash the soy milk off before we actually dye the fabric. Remember, all we did was put the soy milk on as a mordant. We don't need to leave it there while we're doing the dye. I'm going to wash it off with detergent and then I'm going to do the dyeing after that. So here's the dye pot that I dyed yesterday. So I dyed this on Sunday, it's now Monday morning. It's about 24 hours. It boiled and then steeped, and then I'm going to have a look at the colour and see if I need to maybe switch on the pot for a little bit longer. And there you go. Can you see the colour? It's absolutely gorgeous. It's difficult to show you. It's kind of a yellowy, orangey gold rust colour. It's absolutely beautiful rich colour. So I've agitated the skins in the dye bath, and it's been about 10 minutes that it's been boiling away, and so I'm going to see if I like the colour, and then if it's good enough I will be popping this fabric in. Even though it's looking a little bit yellow, it's slightly concerning at this point, but I have faith in the process. The dye bath is ready, hooray! So we're going to put the fabric in. Remember, this is already damp from being washed, and it's going in bit by bit and making sure that there's complete coverage of the fabric. I left the skins in, as I always do, because I don't mind a bit of uneven, as long as there's no white. I don't really care, so I'm just letting it do the process. What I want is for it to have long enough for the mordanted areas of the fabric to start taking the dye. After a couple of minutes, I can definitely see some changes happening, but I can't actually see the pattern coming out yet. But I can see that the whole fabric is changing to a sort of yellowy greenish colour. I'm not really sure what is happening at this point, but I'm just going to keep mixing and agitating to make sure that the dye gets into all the areas of the fabric. As you can see here, I've just picked it out, and you can actually see some of the darker areas of the fabric, which means that the soy milk mordant has worked. At this point I decided that I'd agitated it all enough and that it was completely covered, and I decided to leave it alone for around about 10 to 20 minutes and just let it do its magic while I got on with something else. When I opened the pot after 10 minutes, I saw that the colour had completely changed. Maybe a watch pot really doesn't boil. You can see when I pull it out, you can clearly see the mordanted areas really popping out. They've gone like a dark brownish orange colour, and the cotton is like a creamy colour. I'm thinking that this will probably wash out because those creamy colour parts have not been mordanted. So in theory they should actually wash out. It's time to remove it from the pot, but please be really careful at this point because it is so hot. Hot fabric is no joke. And then a good rinse in, I just did it in cold water because that's all I have in the studio. I didn't wash it, I just rinsed it because I'm going to do another process after this. But look at the places where I painted, and I did some splashes intentionally with soy milk. It's amazing. Even though I think the colour's really pretty, I've decided that I want to do an iron bath because I like more sort of greyish tones, and I'm trying to make a scarf for autumn for me, a really soft cotton scarf to go from autumn to winter. So I've decided I'm going to do the same method as I did with the chestnuts. It's been exposed a bit here to maybe some of the iron from the previous project, and it's really changing colour, but it's giving me a hint of what colour is coming up, so I've decided to go ahead with it. If you're interested to see the chestnut dyeing process that I did with the iron bath, you can go and look at it on the screen now. So you need warm water and you need some ferrous sulfate, which you're going to put a little sprinkle in to the water and just make a very simple iron bath. water was a little rusty and everything had dissolved in the warm water, I am going to now put it in the iron bath and it will change immediately. It's just such an amazing process. You have to keep an eye on the colour because it will be a colour that maybe you don't want in the end, so just keep an eye on it. And in we go. I'm going to put it in from the end. It's a really small bath and I'm wondering if it's going to be big enough or enough liquid, but we're going to do this by trial and error anyway. I haven't got gloves on, but I'm not going to touch the liquid. This is not a good idea to touch the chemicals. It can also stain your hands, so please just be a little bit careful when you're around chemicals. I'm just going to use my tongs for this bit, and then when I've got the colour that I love, I'm going to pull it out. Now, somebody in the comments from the chestnut video said you can neutralise the process after the iron bath with bicarbonate of soda. Now, I wish I'd known that when I did the chestnuts and when I did this video, but I didn't. So the next time I'm going to do bicarbonate of soda bath to take it to an alkaline state so that it will stop oxidizing. So the colour is already grey, which is the colour I really wanted because I'm more of a cool coloured person, so I didn't really want the browns and the oranges. I love them, but they just don't look good on my skin. So as you can see, it's gone quite dark, so I'm going to get it out and rinse it, and hopefully it will stay this beautiful colour. Here's the final reveal of the fabric. I'm so happy with the cool colour that it changed to. I will say that I have been working on this fabric a little bit further. I also dyed some sashiko thread and I've been stitching up and down my fabric with that to put a little bit more of an embellishment on it. The dye pot was still sitting there and I wondered if I could dye a couple of gauze handkerchiefs for the elderly couple who gave me the pomegranates in the first place. I thought they'd appreciate the colours from their tree being captured in something they can use every day. So I'd already pre-mordanted these a few weeks ago and I thought, well, I'm ready to dye them. I've wet them so they're really damp and I'm just going to put them in the hot dye pot and leave them overnight. The next day I did a dip dye technique. As you can see, I did diagonally on this one and on the other one I did it crossways. I think they're super cute. And the following day when they were dry, I presented them with a cute little bag to the elderly gentleman to say, here is your tree in handkerchief form. He was so happy and he put it in his pocket and said, I'm going to take that to work today. Thanks for watching today. If thrifting and crafting and life in Japan is interesting to you, please consider subscribing and make sure that you hit the notification button so that you know when I've uploaded some new content.